Hello, everyone. This is Ali Tarnashi from Atlantic Arabic TV, and today we have a special guest, David Coon. And thank you very much, Mr. David, for accepting the invitation and being here with us today.
Thank you for your invitation, Ali.
Thank you, thank you. So let's get to know Mr. David. David Cohn, he's the leader of the Green Party of New Brunswick and MLA for Fredericton South since 2014. Has been a tribalized in Canadian and New Brunswick politics. He has been elected 3 times by people of Fredericton South, and he's seeking a 4th term to represent the resident in the new riding of Fredericton Lincoln. Under his leadership, the New Brunswick Green Party is the only provincial party to have grown its support in both the largely Francophone North and largely Anglophone South in 2018. 2 more Green MLA were elected, Megan Mitten representing the Mimrambuk Tantamar and Kevin Arsenault representing Kent North. Both were re-elected 2020. David appointed them as deputy leader in 2023. He holds a bachelor's degree of science in biology and worked for nearly 3 decades with the Conservation Council of New Brunswick as an advocate, educator, and collaborator with organizations representing farmer, commercial fishermen, and wildest owner. David envisioned a New Brunswick where young people are inspired to stay and newcomers are drawn by commitment to a vibrant, sustainable future, which will be achieved through collaboration, action, and a government that places the well-being of people, community, and the environment at the center of everything it does. Mr. David, a lot of background and a lot of experience. Mr. David, we thank you again. I know you have a busy day, and let's dive into this. I know the election is coming soon, so we will have we are especially keen to address 2 important areas: housing crisis in Greater Moncton and New Brunswick. Many families, Mr. David, especially those with low income, are being priced out of their home due to escalating rent price, leading to displacement and homelessness. We would like to explore Mr. Cohn's perspective on the following. Do you support rent control measure or tenant protection to stabilize housing costs? If so, how would you implement them in New Brunswick?
100% supportive. It's essential to have a rent cap. We were suggesting it be at 2.5%. This reflects a commitment that I first made in 2018 when I introduced legislation to put in place a rent cap as part of an overhaul to the Residential Tenancies Act. I brought the legislation back again recently because it was defeated. Once again, Blaine Higgs used his majority to defeat my bill to create the rent cap. So that commitment is unwavering. It's absolutely essential to keep people from facing unaffordable rent increases, from being evicted for not being able to pay their rent, and to keep them in their homes.
Thank you, Mr. David. And do you support the other part? What specific policy would you introduce to address the current housing shortage, particularly in a rapid growing region of Greater Moncton and in the province as well?
So one thing is for sure, the rent cap will keep us from losing more affordable housing. We've been losing affordable housing at a tremendous rate as it gets converted into high-end, expensive rents. So that's one thing. Two, we will instruct the Crown Corporation, NB Housing Corporation, which is intended to serve a public purpose around housing, to focus its attention on supporting the development of non-market housing. In other words, housing apartments that don't require profits to be generated, like nonprofit housing, cooperative housing, that are managed by local boards of directors. This is a kind of housing that is by definition of affordable because it's taken out of the market. There's no profit. And we would insist that NB Housing be the lender of first opportunity. Right now, the way it's set up is if you want to develop a non-market housing, if you're a nonprofit organization, a cooperative, a faith organization,
Mhm.
because faith organizations are doing this as well, or a community, a service club, community club, then you have to already find your first stage of financing elsewhere before you can get financing from the New Brunswick Housing Corporation, which is absolutely lunacy. When the Brunswick Housing Corporation is a crown corporation set up by the government to serve a public purpose, which is to ensure we have a adequate supply of affordable housing. So we will require them to step up with the first phase of funding to help those projects get off the ground. The second thing is for the private development of affordable housing, we would lower, when we tie the property taxes of rental properties to their rental income. So if you have a rental property that has low rent,
Mhm.
therefore lower rental income, then as the owner, you're going to pay a lot less tax every year, which will be a considerable saving and make it more desirable to build low rent, affordable housing. If it's a luxury apartment,
Mhm.
the rental income obviously will be higher, and therefore you will be paying a higher tax.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And just by the way, like we contacted other party to attend, and we contacted the Liberal, Conservative, and NDP, and nobody like reply or attend. I really appreciated Mr. David like for the Green Party that's take the time and being here to answer the question for a lot of people in the Arab and Muslim community. The
That's
next
my pleasure.
question. Thank you. The next question: how would you ensure like this policy lead to development of affordable housing rather than primarily benefiting luxury development? Like we see a lot of department here in Moncton, like luxury, and a lot of people like they are ending up like homeless, and which is like I can understand like the homelessness is a big issue now in New Brunswick or in Moncton, but we have like three categories of homelessness, like the one that with the like people with addiction or mental illness, and there is the other category that people just they can't afford to pay their rent, and they miss the first month, second month, third month, and now they are in the street because like the pricing is so high, and that's unfortunate to see that happening in our community, which we call home, Moncton and New Brunswick.
So obviously the rent cap was one essential tool here to keep the rents from rising significantly. I know of 80-year-olds now who lost their housing and are living in shelters, for example. It's
Mhm.
unacceptable. So that's one thing. In terms of new housing or the renovation of existing housing into affordable housing, our plan to tie the property taxes through the property assessment process to the rental income, because the property taxes are a significant part of the annual cost for property owners who have rental properties, will make it much more advantageous for them to build or renovate buildings into affordable housing because their annual tax costs will be significantly lower with lower rental income. So that will provide an advantage to the development of that kind of rental property. And then finally, of course, to ensure that we properly use the New Brunswick Housing Corporation. So it's a public body set up by the government with a public purpose, and that we would ensure that its public purpose was clearly mandated in law to support the development of housing that is non-market, housing that is non-profit, or cooperative housing that is non-profit. And those can be developed by nonprofit organizations, faith groups, community groups, co-ops themselves, and that's another way of ensuring we have a good source and good quantity of affordable housing. My vision is that we create a building boom in affordable housing through these measures, and I believe that they will work and they will meet that goal.
Hopefully, because it's we need that, especially in New Brunswick and in our community. And Mr. David, like we heard a lot, like a lot of people said, like a lot of leaders from different party, they promised during the election. But is there any plan actually that's going to happen after they've been elected or after they win the election? And that's what we want to see in reality. We want to see like some tangible solution for this, because it's just in Moncton we have like over 700 homeless. That's a lot for a small town. That's 150,000 people, Mr. David.
So I didn't get into politics to make a political career. I
Hmm.
didn't get in it to create some legacy for myself. I got in it to serve the people in our province, all people, to serve our communities, to make life better. And so my commitment is to implement our commitments, to implement um, the solutions that are there at hand, and not put band-aids over problems like we've been seeing, or ignore them like we've seen in the past, which is how things have become reached sort of a crisis stage. So if I were to lead a government, a green government, then that's my commitment. But even if I don't, and if I'm leading the opposition in the Legislative Assembly, my commitment stands to continue to press for these changes, to get them implemented, to work with whoever's in government to make that happen, to bring forward legislation to try and get them to adopt it. So I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to give up. I will be relentless.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Mr. David. And that will lead us to the next step, which is like healthcare. And especially now in the emergency, we have like waiting time. That's insane. Like people wait 17, 16, 20 hour, like to go to see the emergency. Do you guys have any plan, any strategy like to help with that and to reduce the time and to have more doctor and more nurse?
Yes. Well, again, healthcare has been neglected for decades. By successive governments of both conservative and liberal types, despite the warnings that those working in the healthcare system were giving them, doctors and nurses and paramedics and nurse practitioners and really just about it, and former hospital administrators, hospital directors, they were ignored. And the forecast or the what they projected would happen is happening. So the solutions are there, they're at hand, and we will implement them. That's the difference. No band-aids, no piecemeal solutions, no partial solutions. So there are two key parts to this. One is to rapidly transition from doctors working by themselves to team-based practices where you have physicians, nurse practitioners, dietitians, physiotherapists working together as a team. So you don't have to go through the doctor every time. You can go directly to the nurse practitioner. You go directly to the physiotherapist, whatever your need is,
Mhm.
on the team. This is something that has been promoted by both of the other parties since 2003, and very little has happened because they've never put the funding in place to pay the team members. The only members of the team that have funding are the doctors who are funded through Medicare, which we all know. There is no funding system for the other team members, so there's no teams. So that's the missing piece here. So we would
Mhm.
put funding in the budget to ensure that the team members would be paid through the Department of Health in a similar manner to the way doctors are by Medicare. And that would ensure that these team-based family practices, these collaborative clinics, would be created, led by doctors, maybe set up by doctors or set up by nurse practitioners. I was in Hampton today, for example. Our candidate in Hampton, Laura Myers, was contacted by doctors there a little while ago, four doctors who wanted to establish a team-based family practice.
Mhm.
They had identified nurses and nurse practitioners who wanted to work with them, but when they realized there was no source of funding to actually pay the nurses and nurse practitioners, they couldn't move forward. And that's been the case for the last 20 some years. So that's what we're going to change. We're going to make the investments necessary to pay those team members, those other health professionals, to work with doctors or nurse practitioners. And that's going to make the difference. The other piece of this is we've been losing nurses, in particular, and some family doctors to Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island because this government and the past government, conservative and liberals, have failed to pay the same kind of salary and benefits to our healthcare workers, doctors and nurses, as they do in Prince Edward Island and Nova Scotia. Now, we are similar provinces. We have similar economies. And so there is no reason we shouldn't be paying an equivalent wage and benefits to our nurses and to our family doctors. So by doing that, we'll bring them home. And a nurse the other day said exactly that to me. She lives in Memramcook. I said, what's the most important thing from your perspective to fix the healthcare system? She said, bring me home. And I said, what do you mean? She said, I'm working in Nova Scotia as a nurse. I want to work home. I want to contribute to solving the problems at home. But to support my family, I have a better income in Amherst, just across the Nova Scotia border. Can you fix that? I said, yes, we can fix that. We can fix that by making sure that salaries and benefits across the three provinces are comparable.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one piece of it. The other piece is what's happening is our graduates, our young people who graduated from nursing, faculties of nursing at University of Moncton or in UNB, our young people are graduating from our medical schools at University of New Brunswick, St. John, or University of Moncton, are leaving the province after they graduate. We need to keep them here. So what we propose to do is if they're willing to sign a 5-year contract that says they will work in New Brunswick for 5 years after graduation, then we will cover the cost of their tuition with bursaries. So the tuition in the end will be no cost to them. Because why? This is a crisis right now in terms of having the healthcare professionals in our healthcare system. We're losing them. We need to keep them here, and we need to bring them back, and that's what we'll do.
Exactly, exactly. And also a lot of immigration, like we have a lot of immigrants come from all over the world. And when they come here, as soon as they get their PR, they use Moncton just like a bridge to move or to go to a different places. What can we do, like to keep the immigrant and they can understand? A lot of them, like they come as a doctor, they come as a professional, but they can't work in the province because they don't get like the credential or they don't get their diploma, didn't get recognized. And we have a lot of doctors, nurse that we can use those talent, we can do those skills and implement in the society. And do you guys have like do you have any plan, Mr. David, like for this, for those professional that they already doctor back home and they can't practice that here, instead of like get them start over at least like maybe like 6 months or 4 months, like maybe just to get to know the system or to understand like maybe the jargon and stuff like that. So is there any strategy for that, Mr. David, as well?
A government under my leadership would enact like regulations to fast track the certification and accreditation of professionals and tradespeople. So doctors and nurses in the healthcare system and other health professionals, as well as other professionals like engineers and tradespeople like electricians, carpenters, bricklayers, heavy equipment operators, because my riding is very diverse in Fredericton. I have many newcomers who come to me saying they can't find work. They've been, and even during this election campaign, going door to door. I've talked to a civil engineer who had a lot of experience in Iran. And he moved here in 2017 with his daughter. She's a scientist now, but he could not find work as a civil engineer. The certification was difficult, which he was willing to do, but in the end, he was unable to find work. So he retrained as an accountant here in New Brunswick, in Fredericton. These kinds of things shouldn't be happening. I talked to an electrician who in Syria had 25 years of experience working on all kinds of big projects and smaller projects, excellent credentials, excellent recommendations, but also he can't find work even to be an assistant to an electrician until he gets certified here, and the certification process is long. So this needs to be fixed. The other thing that's part of this that's important is we have to tackle the systemic racism in the system and tackle it head on. Because I'm sad to say, some employers, when they see a resume from someone who has all the credentials, lots of experience, but when they see the name and it doesn't look Canadian, they're not the first ones to get an interview. I'm sorry to say that as a Canadian, it hurts me, but it is a reality, and people in the Arabic community and other newcomer communities have had that experience. It's not news to anybody who've come to Canada. Excuse me while I take a drink. So, and to do that, we would implement the recommendations of Dr. Barma, who carried out the inquiry into systemic racism, to make sure that we, as a province, have the staff in place to put in place programs to tackle racism, to make sure that it's being properly addressed in the schools, which is currently not, so that there's clear direction for principals and for teachers how to address racist incidents when they occur. And to coordinate this, put in place a deputy minister in charge of a secretariat attached to government to oversee and implement these measures. So there is nothing like that in government today. And while some municipalities have been taking initiative, like Moncton, like Fredericton, to tackle racism head on, the provincial government has kept its eyes averted, not willing to acknowledge that this is a problem or that they have a responsibility to help address this. And so we would tackle it head on. Canadians don't like to talk about it, but everyone who has experienced this, which is all too frequent, well knows the realities.
And thank you for sharing this. Actually, this is something that's going on, and I know a lot of people that they changed their name. They changed their name so they can get called to do the job. And it's unfortunate to see this happening. But like they said, when we change our name, we actually getting called. We're actually getting, like, when we apply for different job, especially government job or different job, we got the call after we changed the name, and they have like few people that they know.
I'm told the same thing. It's very sad that has to happen.
Thank you very much, Mr. David. Before we move to the next question, I would love that, as I said, like we send all this question to all different party, and we would love to have like a debate here with all the other three different party. But like three email, we send it to everyone, but nobody answers. And we have Mr. David here with us. We appreciate the time that you take as well, and we appreciate your. I know you have a very busy schedule, but you decide to join us and answer all the community question. We'll move to the next question, Mr. David. Islamophobia and discrimination in New Brunswick, the rise in hate crime, discrimination, and Islamophobia across Canada, including in New Brunswick, is a growing concern. We would appreciate Mr. David insight on the following. What specific measure would your party and to combat hate crime and discrimination, particularly against Muslim and other marginalized community in the province?
Well, I jumped the gun a little bit, I guess, because part of the answer is what I was speaking to just a minute ago, and that is to implement the recommendations of Dr. Varma's report on systemic racism, and ensure that we have the capacity in government to do that by appointing a deputy minister responsible with staff in the secretariat to do that work. There's nothing in place right now at the provincial level to address Islamophobia or other forms of discrimination or racism. And we know, I know, in fact, an acquaintance, for example, who wears the hijab in the city of St. John. She started carrying pepper spray in her purse out of fear because of the insults that have been hurled at her. And given the situation, it feels very insecure, frightened. And she's a very strong woman, and she and confident person with an important position. But even for her, it's difficult. So I understand that. The little tip of the iceberg as someone who's not a person of color, who's not Muslim. My faith is part of the more dominant faith in Canada. As a Christian, I can only see the tip of the iceberg from my experience with my constituents who come looking for help, telling me their experience. But I'm committed to tackling the problem because I understand how corrosive it is, how toxic it is, and how debilitating it can be, and dangerous in some cases.
Definitely. Next question, Mr. David. How do you plan to foster unity, understanding, and respect between diverse community to eliminate hate and division?
Yeah.
What initiative would you support to raise public awareness about the negative impact of hate and discrimination and build a culture of empathy and inclusion?
I guess there's two things that I think of immediately. One is in the schools and universities, to bring young people together from diverse backgrounds to have the hard discussions in a safe environment, that so everyone can share their perspective and feel respected. So those would have to be, facilitated carefully, well, and so on. But I think, at the very sort of base of all this, people need to get to know each other.
Hmm.
We don't know each other, then, especially in the world of social media today and the conflicts that are happening in the world, and in whether it's in the Gaza, Lebanon, the Middle East, Africa. It's got many terrible
Hmm.
conflicts going on as well. Sudan comes immediately to mind. Congo. Um, so we need to know each other. We need to have forums to do that. So I think educational settings are a good place to do that. Our public schools, our post-secondary schools,
Hmm.
and the secretariat. I mentioned that I would want to see set up, and the provincial government could facilitate that and bring in some expertise to help establish these kinds of round tables. Maybe we can call them, or gatherings.
Hmm.
Uh, so that's one. The other area I think that is perhaps a way to start with adults is by bringing faith communities together, different faith communities, um, and there's a basis for building some understanding among the diverse faith communities in our towns and cities. And again, I think there's a role for government to play to facilitate um, the coming together of faith communities in an organized, facilitated fashion to share their stories and their experience and their perspectives, and to talk about who they are to each other. Again, so that we can know each other better, and because people carry lots of stereotypes around, people carry lots of hurts around, and always an experiences that are are not positive in some, like are quite negative in some cases. So it's important that there's a open and um, respectful exchange so we can hear each other. And I think that doing that, helping faith communities come together, might be a way to do that. I mean, myself as MLA, I've been invited to the mosque numbers of times to Eid celebrations by the Muslim community, to events at the synagogue here in Fredericton, and of course part of the Christian community. So. And also by the Hindu community to some of their high holiday celebrations. And I appreciate those invitations. It's a tremendous opportunity for me to gain better insight, better understanding, and to be with people who are of different faiths than me. And it's a great learning opportunity and wonderful. And what I find is at its core, in our faiths, our different faiths, there are so many commonalities in terms of loving each other, loving your neighbor, uh,
Hmm.
and compassion for people who are vulnerable or poor, and so on and so forth. That there's a real basis for um, coming closer together.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you very much, David. And it's exactly like if we want to be on the same level, we get to understand each other. We get to educate each other about each other. And when we get to that stage, at least we will see it from their perspective, from their point of view. And that's what we want, like a peaceful world where we can understand each other and respect each other. And that's how we will build a diverse and connected world.
Of course, we have share a common humanity. And in that sense, we're part of a global family. I always say we're all cousins when it comes down to it. And sometimes, we need to know our cousins better. So the potential is unlimited. But if we don't move in this direction, then, the potential for hate, discrimination, and racism to build is is great, because we see the increase in Islamophobia in Canada and New Brunswick, the same for anti-Semitism. It's not it's what do I say? I mean, I feel so terrible about it as a Canadian to see this. So we need to take steps to reverse this, because we know the outcome. We've seen the outcome in some cases with Muslims losing their lives at the mosque in Quebec, or a terrible incident in London, someone who murdered Muslims with their vehicle, and families, and it just. I can't believe that is happening, but I have to believe it. I know it's true, and we need to come together and know each other better.
Exactly. And Mr. David, do you guys have like any strategy, like for instance, some policy that like if there is some hate crime or discrimination, if it will be some like I would say like some fine or like some things so it doesn't happen in the future, and you know what I mean. So we want this doesn't happen to anybody, not just Muslim, but to any other religious or other community or other minority. That's we don't want any hate speech, any discrimination, or any just like people doesn't feel comfortable or safe by being attacked or by people being racist to them.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things there. One is there needs to be clear direction, and there isn't yet in the schools, for how teachers and the principals handle racist incidents in the school, in the schools. When it's happened a number of times, parents have reached out to me as their MLA, and nobody's been satisfied with how the situation was handled. Not a person, no one. So, in fact, when I started to look into it more, there is no policy in place directing how the principals and teachers should respond to racist incidents, anti-Islamophobic incidents, or others. So that needs to be in place, and the teachers need to be trained, and principals need to be trained well about how to implement that policy. So that's a key one, and the same can be said about our on the side of public safety. Our public safety officers, our police officers, could benefit from training as well, and both in terms of what the law actually is, what it says, how to apply it well, and to recognize that their own prejudices that they may be carrying, right, and how that might influence their work. So that's the other. So the schools and the sort of police and justice sector.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. David. I know the time is running after us, and I know you have a busy schedule. And I just want to thank you very much for taking the time and answering all this question. And we appreciate that, Mr. David.
It's my pleasure, Ali. I enjoyed speaking with you, even though some of the topics are troublesome and serious, but we need to discuss them. So thank you for the opportunity.
Exactly. Those topics, like if you don't face it, Mr. David, if we don't have the courage to tackle it and talk about it, when that will happen, we will always repeat the same mistake, and we have to have the courage to talk about it and find solution for it. Definitely.
I share your perspective on that for sure.
Thank you very much, Mr. David.
Thank you.